Hi, welcome to the first edition of We Went to Another Country During COVID, and here's our experience. So we're doing the world record for 70.3 races in a year, and of course international travel was going to be required, and so of course during COVID we now have some experience traveling internationally, so we wanted to share with you guys, our experiences, and maybe it makes it a little easier when you're planning your vacations, your races, or just thinking about it. So I'll start off with before we left, we had to obtain of course, we got our vaccination cards, and those things look terrible. If you guys have seen them, they're just the little card stock with the numbers of your dates written on them. Those are very important.
Very.
We also, to get out of the country, had to have the PCR test, which is the test that takes longer to come back. Generally for us, it's been taking about 30 hours from the time that you take the test to the time that you get it back. Or there's the antigen test, which is everybody calls the 15-minute test, and it is 15 minutes. So so that you know the background of the three things we'll be talking about. So why don't you go ahead and start us off with leaving the country?
So getting on the plane probably was the first part, and we were going to Austria, so we were going to Europe. We were going to Austria. Currently, Americans are not allowed to travel to Austria. We actually got special permission, so that was super cool. But that means there are no direct flights. There's no direct flights from the U.S. to Austria, whereas normally there are. So we had to go through France. We would fly into Charles de Gaulle in Paris, and then from Paris we went to Vienna. So to get onto the plane, the people, we flew Delta, and the Delta agents were very strict about everything that we needed. We were not going to get on the plane without every document we needed. We had a letter of invitation from the government. We had our test. We had our vaccination cards. We had our boarding passes. And then we also, for Vienna, you had to have, not only did we have to have our letter of invitation from the government, but there's also another government form that you fill out online. That was pretty easy to get, and you told them why you were coming. And so you had to have that. So there was, and there were, 7 of us going. So we had to have, each of those pieces of paper for all 7 people. And they were very strict about that. We were not getting on the plane unless we had every single one of those pieces of paper. So that was how we got on the plane. I want to talk about after we flew and how we got through France and into Vienna.
Sure. So France had a document they handed us on the plane that we had actually filled out, but was unnecessary because we were going on to Austria, so they didn't really care. If you were staying in France, then they had paperwork for you. So this comes down to a lot of preparation. Check your embassy websites, check the country websites. There are exceptions out there, and it just takes planning to get it. So stay on that. It's a very cool time to travel because the tourist numbers are low, and so there's not as many people out there. It was not crowded.
Wasn't crowded on the plane either. No. I mean, I wouldn't say the plane was empty by any means, but there were empty seats for sure.
I got three seats all to myself. It was amazing. That'll never happen again. But so we get to Austria. We've got our letters of invitation. We are ready for war, and they stamped our passport and let us right in. So the rules are changing, and they're changing very rapidly. Whatever rules you have when you left are generally acceptable. They told us one story about this guy going to Brazil, and it changed literally on his flight, and they turned him around and sent him back to the U.S. after he landed. But make sure your stuff is good as of that day. And so we're in Austria. Once you're there, Austria required, they called them the FFP2 masks. In the States, we call them the KN95s or N95s, so the better masks. They stopped us because we had the standard American, just the medical grade mask to start with, and they handed us FFP2 masks and said, "Here, wear these."
The cloth masks are fine on the planes and in the airports. It seems if you just wanted like a disposable surgical mask, that seemed to be fine on the plane and in the airports. But once you got out of the airport, you needed the FFP2 mask, and they weren't jerks about it, but that's what's required. When we did go through France, we did have to go through customs. I mean, we had to go through customs, did we get our luggage?
No.
Okay, so we just went through customs. They stamped our passport to let us into France, and then you immediately went to another security screening to go back to get on another plane to go. So that was, we were fortunate. We had a guide that got everyone that was going on our connecting flight to Vienna was in a group. I guess there were maybe a dozen of us or so. And she took us to the customs, and there wasn't a line there, but I feel like if there was a line, she would have taken us to the front. Because there was a little bit of a line at security. It wasn't bad at all, but she made everybody stop and took us to the front, and we went through some special lines just so that we could make our connecting flight. So that was pretty smooth as far as being able to make a connecting flight. There was maybe an hour and a half, I guess, in between when we landed and when we took off, and that was more than plenty of time. And we went to... it was more than plenty of time, I think, to get there.
For France, that was tight. They were pushing. We got off. We went to the bathroom, and then you didn't stop moving until you got to the bus.
Okay.
There was no problems. We had signed everything up through. We traveled Delta on this one, and it was the right amount of time. But there was not a lot of play in that one for certain. Once we landed in Austria, we had all our forms ready, but basically they let us in the country, no problems.
They didn't ask for a single form. They wanted the computerized form that we had gotten permission to come in, not the special letter of invitation, and they wanted the vaccine cards. So the CDC vaccine cards that look super fake, they worked perfect to get into both France and Austria.
And accepted everywhere in Austria. So, of course, we ate out, we did buses. Austria just recently opened up all their tourist stuff. And so we were able to go, tour everything through Vienna. But they wanted to see those cards, and they had absolutely no issues with them. Your other alternative is... The 15-minute test is only good for 48 hours, and they were righteous on checking those things. So you could get the PCR, which was good for 72, or the antigen test, which was good for 48, and the restaurants all checked. Anywhere that we were taking a mask off was checking and had to have it. Their COVID protocols there were strong. They had,
way better than the U.S.
A lot more strict.
They for their contact tracing, every restaurant that we went to, we had to fill out a form stating, who we were and contact info. So I guess, if we were to call the restaurant and say, hey, we tested positive for COVID, they could pull our form and all of the people who were in the restaurant at the time, they could notify them that they needed to be checked.
So while we're in Austria, of course, to get back to the United States, you've got to have the vaccine will not work as of the 4th of June.
I mean, that vaccine card, it got us into Europe, France, and Austria. It got us into every restaurant. It got us into the opera, into... where else did we go? I mean, everywhere. It got us everywhere. What it didn't get us into was the United States.
Call Biden. I'm sure you can put in a good word.
I got the button. I can just hit it. And just
we deliberately tried the vaccination card through customs to see if it would work, and they said absolutely not. We also had our tests. They have plenty of stores that you can go into. I think it was €89 for the PCR and like €40 for the antigen tests. To get into our flight out was out of Amsterdam, and we had to have both tests effectively to be able to fly through Amsterdam. But the government has, just like in the U.S., there's free testing. You just have to know how to do it. Part of your pre-planning should be figuring out. They were called gargle boxes for the PCR test. It's free. It's all done through the phone and through the internet. So there are plenty of free options available, and was not hard once you understood the system. But understanding the system was the key. So you can either pay the money to the tourist traps, or you can go with the free government, but it's just a little bit more work.
Yeah, it does take some planning. I mean, that's really about it, because you do have to schedule an appointment, and you get a QR code they scan the QR code when you go in. So it does take a little bit of planning as far as that goes.
Then for us getting out, once again they checked us for the flight to Amsterdam. They checked us again in Amsterdam. We never got temperature check. What we got? There was one in France. Was the only temperature check that I remember.
They were very particular. I mean, the airlines are super particular about having the correct paperwork, but the customs officials have not been as diligent. So maybe just the airlines have gotten burned or something. I don't, but do they have to fly you back for free if you don't get in? I don't know how that works, but whatever. The airlines are much more strict. Typically, I guess in our experience was you get past the airline, you're home free.
Yeah, there was certainly no problems. Coming back into the U.S., to get onto the plane, we had to provide the COVID tests, but they did not check them at customs into the U.S. at all.
Now, to be fair, we had global entry, so I wonder if that would have changed.
So from our experience, the only thing that's really changed is you got to provide a test when you get on an airplane, and internationally you've got to have a test, to go out to eat, to anywhere that you're removing your mask. So that Austria is one of the early countries to open up. France is supposed to open up here in a few days with a similar system. We'll find out.
We hope they open up, because we got a race there July 4th.
So yeah, it's great. It's a fantastic time to travel. Everything is not crowded, but this does take extra planning. So go ahead and plan ahead. You will absolutely get stuck if you do not have your test, if you have not prepared properly. So yeah.
Right now, be prepared to wear your mask a lot. You had to wear it the entire time you were in the airport, the entire time you were on the flight. They allowed you to take it off if you were eating or whatever, but you couldn't just take it off and hang out. Indoors in Europe, outdoors, nobody was wearing a mask. Rarely did I see anybody wearing a mask outdoors, but be prepared to wear your mask a lot if you're going to travel.
I think that's it.
Anything else? I think we're good. It's great that things are opening back up. It's a little bit different than it was before, but it was super, navigatable for us. We could, we did it.
Yeah, if we can do it, you can.
Yeah,
so
no kidding. We did do a lot of stuff. Yeah. A lot of tourist type stuff, and didn't have any. Never got turned down for anything. You just had to make sure you had all your stuff.
No, the Austrians were super excited that there were tourists coming back. So
I can't say that everybody was super excited.
all of the guys in the things that cater to tourists.
Yeah, anybody who was making money off tourists was super excited. That was for sure.
So look forward to our next video. Of course, our next travel video won't be till France, I guess.
Maybe things will have changed by then. Be interesting to see.
So, thanks so much for watching.